Nestled in a trendy part of Mexico City is a small symbol of resistance. This figure, the so-called patron saint against gentrification. Activists and researchers warn a digital nomad influx in the capital is exacerbating inflation and transforming neighborhoods into expat bubbles. The patron saint's creator, artist Sandra Valenzuela, sees the phenomenon as a rising threat.
What happens is that when people do not have enough money to live in their country cities, they end up going to cheaper countries where they can afford to live. In the end, it's a problem that moves, just as it displaces people.
Nearly 2 million foreigners arrived at the Mexico City International Airport in the first half of this year, approaching the record 2.5 million in the first half of 2019. Demand for short-term rentals has surged 44% over the same period, according to market research company AirDNA. Marco Ailing, a writer and content creator from California, says the math of remote work makes sense.
There's obviously a lot of advantages if you can earn in dollars and spend in pesos.
In the Lux area of Condesa, some homeowners are turning to rental platforms like Airbnb. They can earn $1,300 a month in profit, according to the Neighborhood Association president, in a city where most workers earn less than $3 an hour on average. The stark divide between rich and poor is well known, but some say even rich residents are being priced out. And the local atmosphere is changing.
A la llegada de estas personas y con la vida nocturna.
When all these people arrived and with all the nightlife, noise, and the amount of people passing by increased, it did not feel safe anymore and they could not rest.
Still, Ailing says there are some intangible positives to keep in mind.
I think a lot of people are dispelling a lot of the negative preconceptions about Mexico. They're realizing that no, it's not just narcos and violence and poverty. There's beautiful sides of this country and they're celebrating that too.
What I discovered when I joined Twitter was that this enormously influential company was over a decade behind industry security standards. The company's cybersecurity failures make it vulnerable to exploitation, causing real harm to real people. To put it bluntly, Twitter leadership ignored its engineers because key parts of leadership lacked the competency to understand the scope of the problem, but more importantly, their executive incentives led them to prioritize profits over security. Upton Sinclair famously said, "It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it." This mentality is exactly what I saw at the executive level at Twitter. So what are the problems I discovered? Two basic issues. First, they don't know what data they have, where it lives, or where it came from, and so, unsurprisingly, they can't protect it. And this leads to the second problem, which is the employees then have to have too much access to too much data and to too many systems. You can think of it this way, which is it doesn't matter who has keys if you don't have any locks on the doors.
U.S. inflation unexpectedly rose in August despite a drop in gas prices, which were offset by rising costs for rent, food, and health care. That's according to the Labor Department's Consumer Price Index report on Tuesday, which showed CPI gained by 0.1% last month, when economists were expecting it to fall by 0.1%. The hotter-than-anticipated report suggested that inflation could remain elevated for some time, giving the Federal Reserve reason to stay aggressive and carry out a third 75 basis point interest rate hike at its policy meeting next week. That sparked a sharp sell-off in the stock market, snapping a 4-day winning streak for the major indexes. On a year-over-year basis, consumer prices increased by 8.3%, while economists were anticipating a rise of 8.1%, according to a Reuters poll. While the 8.3% reading marked a deceleration from July's 8.5% rise, inflation is still running way above the Fed's 2% target and has remained above 8% for 6 straight months. The latest inflation numbers are a headache for the Biden administration and Democrats hoping to limit their losses in November's midterm elections. With only one more CPI report due before Election Day, it is unlikely to fall below that 8% level before Americans head to the polls.
U.S. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham on Tuesday introduced a bill that would create a nationwide ban on abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy, with few exceptions.
I think we should have a law at the federal level that would say after 15 weeks, no abortion on demand, except in cases of rape, incest, to save the life of the mother, and that should be where America's at.
Graham's bill comes as his fellow Republicans grapple with finding a clear message on the divisive subject that is proving to be a powerful motivator for voters just 2 months before midterm congressional elections.
Abortion is a contentious issue.
In several recent elections, the issue of abortion rights has propelled Democratic voters to the polls after the U.S. Supreme Court in June struck down the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling enshrining a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy. The most recent Reuters Ipsos poll, wrapped up on Monday, found 63% of respondents said they were less likely to vote for candidates seeking to ban or severely restrict abortion.
So we will be introducing this bill as of right now.
Graham's proposed 15-week abortion ban does not go as far as some Republican-dominated states that have outlawed the procedure almost entirely. But as a federal law, it could push abortion restrictions on Democratic-run states trying to expand abortion access. The Graham bill will go nowhere in the Democratic-controlled Congress, but it could prove a lightning rod for Democrats seeking to mobilize voters and help the party in its long-shot bid to retain control of the House and Senate.
Proposals like the one today send a clear message from MAGA Republicans to women across the country. Your body, our choice.
Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Graham's proposal exposed Republican hypocrisy at the heart of the issue.
Republicans are twisting themselves into pretzels, trying to explain why they want nationwide abortion bans when they said they'd leave it up to the states. For the hard right, this has never been about states' rights. This has never been about letting Texas choose its own path while California takes another. No. For MAGA Republicans, this has always been about making abortion illegal everywhere.
Republicans are favored to take control of the House in November, but could have a harder time regaining their Senate majority, as their candidates struggle in key swing states, including Arizona, Georgia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
U.S. stocks suffered their worst day in over 2 years on Tuesday, erasing a sizable chunk of recent gains, after a hotter-than-expected inflation report dashed hopes that the Federal Reserve might relent on its aggressive plan to hike interest rates. The Dow fell more than 1,200 points to end nearly 4% lower. The S&P 500 fell more than 4%, while the Nasdaq plummeted more than 5%. Zachary Hill, head of portfolio management at Horizon Investments, said the Labor Department's Consumer Price Index report, which showed CPI rose last month when economists were expecting it to fall, threw cold water on hopes that the Fed could ease up on policy tightening aimed at cooling inflation.
Markets have been running with this idea that we are past the peak, that this is going to represent, we knew that gas prices have been coming down, and so that was going to help at the headline level. But I think what really spooked markets today was, one, the fact that we've been rallying for the last week or so. And so we were clearly setting up for a better number. And two, it's clear from kind of core inflation readings and some internals that we look at that we still have a broadening inflation problem that's seeping into more parts of the economy.
The broad sell-off accelerated in the afternoon, pulling every major sector deep into negative territory, with interest rate-sensitive tech giants including Apple, Microsoft, Google parent Alphabet, and Amazon all sinking well over 5%. Meta Platforms and chip giant NVIDIA each lost more than 9%. Nearly all 500, all but 4 stocks in the S&P 500 suffered losses on Tuesday. Among the few to post a gain was Twitter, after a majority of the company's shareholders voted to approve the $44 billion takeover agreement by Elon Musk, handing over the deal's outcome to a court battle in which the billionaire is trying to scrap the acquisition.